Where today we're going to be doing another mock draft. This one's coming out on a Tuesday instead of a Monday, but that's fine. This is going to be our post Super Bowl mock draft. The draft order, although it was just two teams, the draft order has finally been finalized. And so we are going to be doing our post Super Bowl mock draft. Before we get into this video, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy. And please subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot and it'll be very much appreciated. But without further ado, let's get into this mock draft. First pick, Titans. It's one of three options: Ward, Carter, or Travis Hunter. I'm going to go the QB route this time. I just think they're going to take a QB. I know there's not necessarily a quarterback necessarily. I just said that twice, but I know there's not a quarterback necessarily worth taking at number one, but I think if you do take a QB, you go with Cam Ward at 1. Browns at 2. Another team that obviously could go QB here, but I'm going to have them go different. I'm going to have them go not Travis Hunter. I'm actually going to have them go Abdul Carter at 2 because there's all the talk about Myles Garrett. He requested the trade. I know the Browns don't want to trade him, but the fact that he has requested a trade, the fact that he isn't like the oldest player, but he's also not the youngest. He's probably around like 28 or something. You can get you can get a guy alongside Myles Garrett, which would create one of the better pass rush duos, or you can get his replacement. So I really like the Abdul Carter pick at 2. And I think the Giants, that makes their pick, well, I guess it doesn't really make their pick easy at 3 because they could go Shador, but I'm going to have them go Travis Hunter at 3. Potentially can fill 2 needs for you. He can get you a corner, which you desperately need, and he could also get you a receiver at certain times alongside with Malik Nabers. You could go Shador here, I know, but you also are the Giants. You are a big market, so I wouldn't be surprised if they could sign a guy like Russell Wilson or maybe even a guy like Aaron Rodgers or trade for a guy like maybe Matt Stafford. I think I saw maybe the Giants trade for a guy like him. So I wouldn't be surprised if, since they're the Giants and since they have a bigger market and a guy like Malik Nabers, that they can sign one of these veteran quarterbacks for like a year or two and then maybe worry about drafting a guy next year and get a guy like Travis Hunter at 3. Patriots at 4 and Jags at 5. I'm going to stick to what I've been doing, which is McMillan at 4 and Mason Graham at 5. I just really like the fit with McMillan at the Patriots. They could do they could go a tackle here. They could go Will Campbell because their O-line was also bad. But I just feel like to get a guy like McMillan, a big target that can do things after the catch as well, is just great for a guy like Drake May. And then the Jags at 5, they could bolster up their run defense. They could also pair an interior guy alongside Allen and Walker and create a very good young D-line. I know I've kept these picks the same, but I've really liked them to those two teams. Raiders at 6. Now, there's a very good chance that the quarterbacks are off the board for the Raiders and they just go with a guy like, or they just go with the next best non-quarterback. But I think if Shador falls to them, they go with him at 6. I just think I don't see Shador falling past 7. And I do think there's a very good chance he could end up with like the Raiders or the Jets. Raiders obviously need a QB, and they don't necessarily. I know their O-line isn't good. Their team isn't really good in general, but I feel like they could make it not going a guy like Will Campbell, and it's either Will Johnson or Shador at this point. But I like Shador at 6. And then I think that makes the Jets pick at 7 pretty easy here, getting Will Johnson at 7. I like the pick. Pair him alongside Sauce Gardner because DJ Reed's getting old. He's maybe not the same corner that he used to be, so you get a nice guy alongside Sauce. Panthers at 8. Common pick has been a guy like Jalen Walker. Obviously, they would love for Will Johnson to be available. But I'm gonna go a little different here. An edge rusher, because they desperately need edge, who has been climbing the rankings recently based on Senior Bowl performances and just people's opinions in general. I'm going to go Mike Green at 8. I know it seems high, and I don't think the Panthers go Mike Green at 8. If they go pure edge rusher at 8, I think they go Mykel Williams. But I just wanted to switch it up and had the Panthers go with a guy like Mike Green at 8. I'm trying not to keep all the picks the same. So I also didn't go Jalen Walker, who I do like for the Panthers at 8. Saints at 9. I've always got them a tackle because outside of Fuaga, who they drafted last year, they don't have much because Trevor Penning is not necessarily the guy. You could go edge here in this position as well. You could get a Mykel Williams, but I really like tackle. And I'm actually going to give him Calvin Banks this time. I always give a Will Campbell, so I'll give the Saints Calvin Banks at 9. Bears at 10, another team who could go tackle. They could go with Will Campbell. But I feel like although the Bears' O-line was so bad, I feel like their issues are on the interior of their O-line. Like, I feel like their tackles aren't horrible. I know they're rumored to potentially go after a guy like Trey Smith from the Chiefs if he decides to leave. But I feel like their problems in the O-line is in the interior. And there's no interior O-line worth taking at 10. I don't think you go Tyler Booker at 10. And they did hire Ben Johnson as their coach. In Detroit, he was very successful with the 2 running back system. The Bears already have a solid guy in DeAndre Swift. Why not take Ashton Jeanty, pair him alongside Swift, and then eventually he can be that number 1 guy for you very soon down the line. Niners at 11. I've normally taken edges here for the Niners, mainly because the 2 tackles have fallen or have gone off the board in Banks and Campbell. But in this mock draft, Will Campbell's right there at 11. Who knows what's going to happen with Trent Williams leaving, retiring, maybe even regressing, whatever. But you need another guy outside of Trent Williams if he's on the team, and a guy to be on the team when Trent Williams isn't in the future. And I think if Will Campbell or even Calvin Banks is available at 11, I think it's an easy pick for the Niners. I just had them going different directions in the past because those 2 have been off the board. Cowboys at 12. They have been a popular pick for Ashton Jeanty for me. But without Ashton Jeanty on the board, a little bit of a potential rogue pick I like here for them is getting Luther Burden out of Missouri at 12. I feel like 10, 11, 12 is the range of picks where you can start seeing a guy like Luther Burden go off the board. I just feel like the teams that are before that don't necessarily need a receiver, which is why I have him normally falling. But without Ashton Jeanty, I love Luther Burden to the Cowboys. Because there are decent free agent running backs that the Cowboys could sign if they want to address their running back position, which they should. Even though Rico Dowdle did finish the season well. But outside of CeeDee Lamb on that receiver room, you don't have much. You have an older Brandon Cooks, and that's pretty much it. You know, I like Jalen Tolbert and Turpin, but you don't have a true great receiver outside of CeeDee Lamb. And I think Luther Burden has maybe the potential to become that at some point. And I think he'd be a great pair alongside CeeDee Lamb. Another back-to-back familiar picks here for me is Malachi Starks to the Dolphins and Tyler Warren to the Colts. I really like Malachi Starks on the Dolphins. They have a very old secondary, so they could get some youth, some explosiveness in that secondary with Malachi Starks. I think they should address their defense over their offense, and especially if there's not an O-lineman they love, they could go Josh Simmons here. But I like Malachi Starks. They need a safety. He's the best defensive player available, and I like him at 13. I've always liked him at 13 to the Dolphins. And then Tyler Warren at 14. It's been a pick for me for the Colts. I think, although they're not 100% on board with Richardson, I do think they will do their best to help him out and give him the best weapons he can. And then, obviously, those weapons can be useful to a potential different young quarterback they go after if it's not Richardson. And you already have your receivers. You have Downs, Mitchell, Pittman. You have Taylor. You don't have a tight end. And Tyler Warren, I think at 14 is not a reach at all. So you get good value for a tight end to sort of complete that offense around Richardson or just any quarterback. Falcons at 15, there hasn't been a common player for me to the Falcons at 15, but it's just always been edge rusher. It's just the best edge rusher available or whatever edge rusher the Falcons want because they need edge probably more than anybody needs any other position. And it's either Pierce or Mykel Williams. And I'm going to go, I'll go Mykel Williams to the Falcons at 15. It's a toss-up between him or Pierce for me. I'm not too familiar. But I like Mykel Williams to the Falcons. He stays in Georgia as well. I don't know if he's from Georgia. Anybody can just go to Georgia. But he stays in the state of Georgia. Cardinals at 16. I think they really could use some help on the O-line. And I think Josh Simmons is a perfect pick here. You pair him alongside fellow Ohio State tackle alum Paris Johnson. Again, you could go guard, but there's no guard. You're not going to take Tyler Booker probably at 16. So I like him. I like Simmons to the Cardinals at 16. Bengals at 17. Honestly, you just go defense here. You probably just go best defensive player. Although, that you could argue that's James Pierce. But I don't think they necessarily need edge over secondary, linebackers, interior D-line. And when it comes to the interior D-line, it's Kenneth Grant or Walter Nolan. Although Walter Nolan has had a great Senior Bowl and has really risen up the rankings, I still feel like Kenneth Grant is the better D-lineman of the two. So I liked him going to the Bengals at 17. Seahawks at 18, another team that could use some O-line help probably. Could go edge as well, but I feel like their sack numbers, if I'm not mistaken, weren't that bad. So I feel like they can make do without going after an edge. And there's plenty of good edges in the second round that they could go after too. But I feel like the tackles aren't. I feel like the edges are better in the second round than the tackles are. So I feel like the Seahawks should go tackle here. It's do you go Membo, Zabel, Connerly, or Ursery? Not too familiar with the tackles, so I'll just have them go with Armin Membo out of Missouri. Bucks at 19, another common pick has been Benjamin Morrison to the Bucks. They desperately need help in that secondary. Their front seven, mainly their D-line, I think they can do with that. Again, they could also go edge later in the draft when there's some very quality second-round type edge rushers. But I think their secondary was the weakest part of their defense. And Benjamin Morrison not only is the clear best corner available, but he's also potentially one of the best defensive players available in general. And they need defense. They don't need to worry about offense at all. Unless they lose Chris Godwin, I guess. Then they might have to get a receiver. Broncos at 20. This team, I think, does need receiver. And there's one left worth taking in the first, in my opinion. That's Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. I think I said that right. They need somebody outside of Courtland Sutton. You like what Mims has shown you. Who knows if Franklin and Bo Nix's college connection can develop in the NFL. But I think you need an actual solidified guy out next to Sutton, and I think Egbuka could become that. Pittsburgh at 21. You can't go corners here, or you can't go receiver here probably. So I think next best position of need worth taking based on who's available is corner. Their secondary was not the best, especially at the cornerback position. And here, I think it's Jahdae Barron or Siobhan Revel. I think maybe Pittsburgh, with Siobhan's injury that he suffered in the season, maybe don't want to go with him. So I think they go Jahdae Barron out of Texas at 21. Because, the Dante Jackson trade, acquiring Dante Jackson, he had his ups and downs during the season. But maybe pairing him with a guy like Barron can help both next year. Because I think, out of anything on defense they need help with, it is the secondary. Mainly the corners. Chargers at 22. It says here that they need running back, receiver, and tight end. And they do need help on the skill positions. But I don't think you take a guy like Matthew Golden at 22. I don't think you take a guy like a Marion Hampton. You could go Marion Hampton at 22, but you could probably find some good running backs in the second. You're not going to take any of the tight ends at 22. So I think you shift your focus. If all those top skill guys are gone, I think you shift your focus towards defense and mainly the edge position. It even says here they need edge. Because Khalil Mack could leave. Joey Bosa is getting old. You're not too upset with how your young players in like the secondary played last year. Mainly Tarib Still. Really liked Tarib Still. So I think you go edge here. And I think there's a clear-cut edge. It's James Pierce. I think getting James Pierce at 22 is great value for the Chargers. And I think considering who's available at the skill positions, I think James Pierce is a no-brainer at 22. Packers at 23, they need help on the secondary, in my opinion. I think that's what they should address most, especially because Jair Alexander could leave. So I really like Siobhan Revel to the Packers at 23. Because even if he takes a little bit to recover from his injury during the NFL season, I think the Packers are a good enough team that they can. I mean, so are Pittsburgh, but I think they can, especially if they keep Jair for like one more year, I think they can deal with potentially Siobhan taking a little bit to recover. Vikings at 24, a team that I liked taking corners to, but you're probably not going to go with Trey Amos at 24. You could. But I think a pick here that potentially is good for the Vikings is Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. As I mentioned before, he's risen up the boards due to like his Senior Bowl. I didn't have him going over Kenneth Grant. I still like Kenneth Grant, but the next best D lineman is Walter Nolan. Vikings do need help on that interior of the D line, so I really like Walter Nolan at 24. Texans at 25. I think this is where we do see the first guard go, Tyler Booker. I don't necessarily like him at the top of the board, but later to these contenders, I really like him, especially to the Texans, because their O-line in front of Stroud was not good. I think Stroud got sacked the second most of any quarterback, and it's not really the tackles. It's probably more the interior, so I really like Tyler Booker at 25. Rams at 26, another team that could use O-line help, but theirs is more in the tackle position compared to the Texans. So I think they go tackle here. And I like Josh Connerly to the Rams as sort of that next best tackle on the board. And I think we get a little tackle run here. I think the Ravens go tackle themselves. Get Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State, another player who had a good Senior Bowl performance. Because honestly, the Ravens, they could use a receiver, but I don't know if that receiver is Matthew Golden. I don't think they necessarily need to go corners. Their secondary was actually very good towards the end of the year, and I think it will get better. So it's, do you go edge or tackle? I think they go tackle here because I think they'll just sign like an edge out of free agency. Maybe they get a guy like Clowney or something if he gets let go, because they can bring him back. I don't know. Lions at 28, they need edge outside of Aiden Hutchinson. They don't have much going next to Hutchinson. They have good interior, but I don't know, like, the edge I don't really like outside of Hutchinson. And I like Shamar Stewart, maybe a bit of a raw prospect, but a team that could take a chance on a guy like that, I think, is the Lions, because they just have such a good team. And maybe putting him next to Aleem McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson, DJ Reader can help him develop maybe more than if he was on another team. Commanders at 29, another team that I think goes tackle here. A very put together team, to be honest. They could use corner. They could go with a Trey Amos because their secondary was not the best. But I like tackle here more. Protect your franchise, which is Jaden Daniels, and I like Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota to the Commanders. Bills at 30. I think this is where we see Trey Amos go out of Ole Miss. They need help in that secondary. It's more of a older secondary. Outside of Taron Johnson, I don't know if they have any good corners under like the age of 28 or something. So you get that youth in that secondary with a solid guy like Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. Chiefs at 31. I was saying that there might not be a more obvious position to team than edge and the Falcons, but the Chiefs needing a tackle might just be up there. We saw it in the Super Bowl. They have nobody at tackle. They had to move their all-pro, Pro Bowl, superstar guard Joe Thuney to play tackle just to give them somebody. So they need tackle here. It's which tackle do you want? I kind of like Wyatt Millam out of West Virginia. Again, I'm not too... I don't know too much about the O-line, but I like Wyatt Millam out of West Virginia. Eagles at 32. We saw, again, in the Super Bowl, we saw it. Just like we saw how the Chiefs need tackle, the Eagles don't really need anything. They probably have the most complete roster in the NFL. Now, they could lose guys like Josh Sweat to free agency. They could lose Zach Bond to free agency. I think they do bring back Zach Bond, though. But a guy I could see leaving is Josh Sweat, considering how much talent and players they have in that sort of edge rush interior or D-line group. So I think just in case they lose Josh Sweat, I like edge here. It's Scoring or Jack Sawyer. I like Jack Sawyer for me for the Eagles at 32. Especially if they lose Josh Sweat. I really like edge for them. Here's the final draft board. All teams' first round picks. Let me know your thoughts on this mock draft, our post Super Bowl mock draft. Let me know in the comments what you agree with, what you disagreed with. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. And as always, please subscribe. It helps the channel out so much. Just a click of a button. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.